Actually, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session. Yeah, so I had just a couple of things to kick things off, but and then we'll open it up to the floor. Just as a high-level thought, I think kind of we're all in quite competitive markets and spaces, and it just seems like every day, everyone you meet seems to be running a startup, and there's just more people running companies than ever before. And a lot of people get really hung up on competition. How do you each think about competition in your own spaces? I mean, maybe we'll give Murat a minute to breathe. Kicking off with you, Chris.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we've gone through we've got sort of two different types of competition. When we're looking at that self-service space, there were hundreds of folk. But if you start looking at it, they're geographically based differently. So we're based in the UK and Europe, and we want to focus there for strategic reasons. A lot of our competitors are based in the US, and classically US companies find it relatively difficult to cross the Atlantic. And then in the enterprise space, it's sort of quite fun and entertaining, actually. You don't need to be overwhelmed by those very big competitors. And I suppose I see competition as a really healthy thing, because we should be the best, and actually if we're not, then we deserve to go under. And so there's competition sort of keeps you honest, but don't obsess about it. Like, focus on where you're going, and at various points sort of sense check the competition. And if you think, you should always have someone that you think is close to you and that you always need to be better.
Keep your enemies close, yeah. Well, what about you, Holly?
I think, it's important to have kind of your own value proposition kind of in between the competition from the start. So as long as you can hold on to that, it's a good thing, and make sure you're kind of differentiating yourself and not kind of chasing the competition. So kind of at AppSumo, I guess our main value add is really being able to deep dive into your analytics on mobile, whereas our competitors may be kind of great scale, but at a higher level.
I see. Cool. What about you?
It's similar to Chris, really. It's like we never set out, when we first set out to make Marvel, if we said that what we wanted Marvel to be in 5 to 10 years, it doesn't look anything like a competition, so that's not what I'm really worried about. But yeah, you're naturally going to go up against deals with these people, and then you just got to differentiate yourself with a really good proposition, and as you start to get to maturity, it's like starting to build a brand. And that is the one place where you can really separate yourself pretty quickly.
Sure, nice. I was going to pick on you one more time, Holly. Being in the advertising space, startups around the room, they don't have much money to pay for ads, and they often don't think about ads, and often it seems like a bit of pride to say we spent nothing on marketing. What do you think? What's your thoughts on paid acquisition, and whether startups should be thinking about that, and what stage they should be thinking about that?
I think it's great. I guess it really depends who you're trying to target. The nice thing is there's kind of so many different ways of advertising and so many different platforms you can advertise on. It's really easy to kind of spend a small amount of money but find like your perfect audience, particularly with things like Facebook, where you've got so much kind of data against them. You know, you can make sure you're spending that money in the best possible way. It's always worthwhile doing as long as I guess you're ready to handle kind of the additional traffic.
Got it. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that, or no? Or no, that's fine. I'm going to stop asking questions and hand it over to the floor, because I'm sure lots of people have been thinking about stuff. Please feel free to ask away. Go for it. Anyone? We are okay. Okay, this is good. It's usually hard to get someone to talk, other than Ben, because he loves talking. Ben, go for it.
All right. My question for Chris. So you're saying that obviously it's interesting coming from the NHS and having that sort of industry-specific knowledge leading into building a product that eventually moved away from the NHS, but that gave you that direction.
Yeah.
Do you think you would have been able to get into enterprise markets without that previous experience? And if you think you could have, sort of why? Like, what tips would you give to someone who doesn't have enterprise experience wanting to try and take on that market?
I'm usually asked to repeat the question, but...
I sort of get it. See, did NHS experience sort of help us with the enterprise sale? Yeah, it's a good question. So, yes, sort of, because in the way, although the NHS is kind of slightly unusual. It's an enterprise, so it's big, and it's got some other complexities that you sell to people that are very disparate from people that are using it, and they tend to make very protracted decisions. But I think so almost it was like an extreme boot camp in how to do enterprise sales, because it's so difficult. And we learnt a lot from that, and that 4-year period was really useful in all sorts of ways. Like, it's a nice training where you make all these ridiculous mistakes, and we learned a lot from that. It's the Thomas Edison 1,000 ways to not invent a light bulb thing. And there are various principles that we learned there that we hold on very strongly to now. So that it was useful, I guess. But to be honest, most of the kind of the nuances of how to deal with big enterprise organizations, we're still learning. And I think just always sense checking what you do, and if you hit some problems, like looking back. So we do things, this was mentioned in another talk about making mistakes. So there's a principle in the NHS where you have something called after action review. So if something bad happens, you kind of dispassionately go, why did that happen? There's always 4 or 5 things, and it's never anyone's fault. It's the no blame thing. That's what it was. And it's never anyone's fault. Actually, there's various system failures that put someone in a crappy position and they failed. And so we do that when we think we haven't done well, and if that's in product or sales, and we sit down and go, why did that happen? How do we help that not happen again? So I guess that would be my advice, is try and be very open and sort of analyse where you think you haven't killed it, and don't blame folk, but learn and try and make sure that doesn't happen again.
What are the principles that you said that there were some principles that you really hold on to? What are those?
So the no blame culture is really important, and it's something that we hold on to. And then I guess when things do go wrong, and again, I think you mentioned this, like, just be honest about it and deal with them, and don't panic. So things go wrong in health, and you're sort of confronted with these overwhelming situations. And the number one thing is the best way to get through this is not to panic and sort of deal with it in a logical way. So we had a situation. It was 3 years ago. All of our servers went down in sequence. We had a memory leak, and it was amazing. And it was like a big trauma call in the A&E department, because it was like, oh my word, what's going on? And the main thing is just to get control of the situation. So we treated it a little bit like a major incident in a hospital. So we were like, right, so what we need to do is find out what's going on. Need you to man the phones, and need you to look at servers. And we sort of deployed people and managed it. And it was amazing, like really great, massively stressful, but our clients only saw 1 minute of downtime, and it took us 8 hours to resolve it, because we were managing it in the back end. So those sort of principles, and the ridiculous honesty. So that honesty with clients, if you can't do something, just be honest. Or if you need to capacity plan because you're small, just be honest. And that kind of transparency, I think, has really helped us, because it helps you build credibility all the way along.
Great. Go for it.
Sounds like you all work collaboratively. You've got a few people that are making a decision. Is that the case, or is it just one person who makes the final decision?
So the question was, do we all work collaboratively, and decision making, right?
Making a decision.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So who makes all the decisions at Marvel?
Well, I think we hired talented people to give them the power to make those decisions. Like there's for certain things that I'm good at, I make a decision for, but there's lots of people with the experience we need to fill the gaps of the various teams, and they get to make decisions on those. So
yeah, cool. You guys got anything to add on that?
We do the same thing. So that principle that actually, if you employ smart people, and there's really good evidence that if you as a team try and make decisions, you cancel out each other's biases, so together you make a better decision. So but one of the lessons has been to tread that fine line. That collaborative thing is really important, but it can be misconstrued as not knowing where you want to go. And I think just being really clear, like, we're going to discuss this and we're going to make a team decision, but ultimately I'm going to make the decision. If it goes wrong, I'll carry the can, because otherwise it's almost like a lack of direction. And we had that a little bit, that feeling that consultative thing was a bad thing, and I think now we've got like a happy place.
Yeah, we've had this a bit too, and one of the quotes I heard recently from Mr. Jeff Bezos was disagree and commit. So often just like, you rarely have 100% information on any decision to make, but it's better to make a damn decision than keep mumbling and discussing it. So yeah, it's always just speed of making decisions regardless of who makes them, Any other questions? We got, go for it.
Just interested to hear how you guys individually sort of collect and prioritize customer feedback, especially also for enterprise, because it's not always the end users who are using it or in charge of actually making that purchasing decision.
Just to repeat the question for the video, taking all that feedback and how to prioritize features based off that, right, Hugh? Yeah. Got it, maybe, Holly, what do you think?
I think there's always got to be kind of a balance. There's always a lot of feedback coming from a lot of directions. At the moment, Appsum is still in quite a nice phase where we've got quite a select group of customers, so it's much easier to handle the feedback. But I think, whereas in the past, there's, kind of gathering that feedback, putting it all together, working out kind of what would suit as many people as possible. One way that I've seen is really nice is creating like a Trello board where clients can log in and kind of upvote different features and kind of vote on what they want, and then kind of taking that as a big part of the feedback. But again, making sure that's kind of alongside your long-term goal and you're not getting distracted by every client request.
Cool. What about you, Mira?
In a similar way, I think that for us, we have a mission and a long-term goal, and sometimes when you get feature requests, it's sometimes not the thing they're asking for, what they want. It could be it could be a bad user experience. It could be a competitor has it and Marvel's just slightly cheaper. Like, you don't, like, all these sorts of things that you really need to get to the bottom of before you even take that into consideration and it even touches your roadmap. So we're pretty rigid and we say no a lot, and we're pretty upfront about it. But we do say, we'll take this on board, we're going to review it, and it will go into somewhere where we'll talk about it. But we don't say yes very often.
What about you guys, Chris?
Yes, just to pick up on that, we do something very similar. Often when a client says, can you build this feature, what they mean is, can you solve a problem?
Yes,
and
exactly.
we want to get to that problem, and that probably isn't the right way to solve their problem. That question about where should we get feedback from? Because actually the people that buy it aren't the people that use it. So we measure both. So we use Ask Nicely to get actual employee feedback, really important. And it tends to be really polar. So it's either amazing or it's, I can't reset my password. And so it's often sometimes you get, support requests through your Ask Nicely, but it's great. So whenever we get a not great Ask Nicely, they get a response right away, really important. But then looking after our sort of executive management teams, and what you want to do there is, yes, make sure they're delighted, but you're trying to create heroes in that organisation. They've sort of bet on us to solve a problem, and if we let them down, they look really bad. But if we solve their problem, they look amazing in their organisation, and then they go to other organisations. So almost all of our business comes from inbound and referrals, and we've had executives go to other organisations and then call us to sort their scheduling. So that's a really nice thing. So quarterly account reviews for those folk, looking into how we might support them doing it better, getting back to them with other problems that we think they might have that we might be able to solve. But then Ask Nicely is great for employees.
Cool. Awesome. Any other? Yes, you at the back, yeah.
I have a question. Well, this carries on what Chris said during his talk, that some clients were hurt by other companies. And I'm interested to know from Chris and all three, how you manage it in-house and to make sure that does not happen.
Yeah.
And how you make sure that if it's on the way there, how you bring it back on board.
Yeah, it's really good.
So the question was how customers can be hurt by other companies, was that right?
And how they manage it.
And how you manage that, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's an interesting problem as you scale. So when you've got one enterprise client, you can dedicate everything to it, and that's great. As you scale, so we've had this sort of big growth in Q1, and now the big challenge is, well, how do you execute that? So this is the thing we have right now. We Gantt chart everything all the time, and that's really important. That's just the first phase, and that allows you to sort of make sure that you've got the capacity. So the honesty thing with our clients is we say, so we're quite small, so actually we need a capacity plan. So this is when we can fit you in, or here. The big challenge is they often slip and then they start to overlap. It helps you book leave appropriately, so you're sort of managing your resource. You know when you need to recruit people in. But then it also breaks down into how we're estimating time. So if there's some development work to do, it's really important that we estimate that appropriately and that we don't interrupt the devs so that doesn't slip, because then that impacts on the rest of the project. So just ridiculous planning, and we reassess it daily and weekly.
What about Holly, Mira?
I'm going to go. How we manage that, we've got an amazing experienced team who build relationships and friendships with customers, and they've got a great motto. It's you should never not know why your customer churned, and that's how they do it. So if one day one of our biggest customers goes, oh, we don't want to be with you anymore, they should know that 6 months before that happens.
Yeah.
So it's and that's how they work. Is like they constantly have check-ins and monitors health metrics and things like that. So the idea is that they should never have a bad experience, or if there is something going wrong, we'd be able to find out and fix it. So that's our process.
Cool. What about you, Holly? Anything?
It probably goes back to kind of, I guess, pacing yourself and making sure that you are ready to kind of fully serve that customer. I think a lot of the time, if a startup's in an early stage and a big customer comes along, you get really excited. You want to do it. You start selling features you don't have, and that can obviously be a really, really dangerous route to go down. So if you kind of wait until you're ready, then you have a much greater chance of kind of retaining that customer, kind of being honest with them maybe and saying, right now I don't think we can work with you, but we'd love to in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, thank you. Wow, there's just more and more questions coming up. Yeah, go for it.
Chris, you sort of had a great quote. You sort of listen to everyone but ignore most of it. Sort of built up a technique for understanding which bits to ignore and which ones to keep on board.
So the question was, have you built up a technique for choosing which customers to actually pay attention to when you're getting so much feedback? What advice to listen to and actually pay attention to, yeah.
Yes, no, we haven't, and I think there's not an easy way to do it, and that's why I suppose when you first step into the world and you sort of don't know who's credible and who to trust, you listen to lots of people and that can be quite overwhelming. But then I suppose you build up like a cohort of trusted advisors. But in that first stage, it's just test everything, listen to everyone, and some themes will come out, and those predominant themes can still be wrong, but they go and test it and validate and look into it, and that can be quite frustrating. But then ultimately, you're confident when you make that decision that it was right at the time, even if ultimately it turned out to be wrong, because you've got to be sure that you're doing it because you believe it's right, not because someone told you to do it. So no, unfortunately.
Cool. Go for it. I think that might be our final question, unless anyone else has anything to add. Oh, 2 more questions, and then we're off to the pub. Yeah, go for it.
Holly alluded to don't panic in effectively her talk about when things go wrong. I work in an industry where I work with a lot of companies that are kind of at that panic stage. You turn up nice and chilled, and they panic because Is there any advice, if there's one tip that each one of you could give to kind of de-escalate larger clients from being stressed to we can deal with this, we can handle this? So is there one tip that you could give?
So the question was, how do you de-escalate panicking clients, and how do you deal with that? Maybe. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible job of this. Holly, go for it.
I guess the first thing, if you can get to the client before they get to you, then obviously it's a much easier situation to handle. If not, if you can go to them with any information to tell them kind of how long it's going to be down for, or whatever the problem is, that you're on top of it.
Something they've come to you with the problem and they're panicking about it, so you are the kind of solution provider and they're going, everything's on fire, can you put it out, that sort of thing. So in that kind of thing, how would you best do that?
Give them as much information as you have, whether it's, we're going to be honest, we don't know when this is going to be live, any workarounds, just basically as much information. Kind of a lot of the platforms I've worked with, there have been alternative solutions as well. Like when we were building on top of Facebook, they could go and do things directly in Facebook. It wasn't as nice. It obviously overrides the use of our platform, but giving them any alternatives, and just keeping them updated as soon as you have any information.
Cool. What about you, Murat?
It's very similar. It's we tend to get people come in and a solution they have, they're just either not happy with, or it's renewing and they've got one day to find a new one, and something like that where they're in a blind panic. We just move really quickly. I think we try and address all the things that they have on their mind and solve the problems that they need to, and get them on board. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Move quickly. Yeah. Cool. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, so last medical analogy of the day. So in A&E, when someone's really sick, we've often been working on them or helping our patient for an hour, 2 hours. The point that it all goes wrong is when you call the anaesthetist. So they're like the panic people, right? And they have this lovely kind of manner of just coming down, just going, right, let's turn that noise off, let's silence this, let's just calm everything down. Where are we? And it's sort of that approach, which is okay, cool. So I know there's a panic, but let's sort of get this all under control. Let's stop the background noise. Okay, what are the problems? And often there are some quick win things. So like understand the problem, and there'll be some interventions. We can do this right now, and that's going to help, right? And that's just going to, we're moving. And then there's going to be things that you'll implement now that will solve things in a month or 2 months. Well, let's do those, but let's do the quick things first. Let's get things under control and we're progressing, and then let's plan for the rest of it. And I think often what you need in those sort of panic scenarios, even if on the inside you're thinking, oh, I have no idea what, you kind of think, well, actually, let's just approach this in a structured way. And probably the best thing that you can do is come across as very calm and logical and structured. And that sort of instills that confidence that, okay, they've got this, we can trust them. And then that's the sort of process that you take them on.
Awesome. There was one more question, I think. Yeah, go for it.
I have a question. How do you go about the enterprise sales? How do you structure deals? So is it about users per sites per client? Or is it services? How do you structure it? Do you have any learnings about that at all? Like how do you find out?
So the question is, and do our best to answer this in 5 minutes or less. So team, how do we think about enterprise sales?
I'm going to let you go first.
It's really difficult, I think, is the takeaway lesson. So we've revised pricing a lot, and I have this sort of overwhelming desire to make our pricing ridiculously transparent, and it's really difficult to do because we have a platform cost because we spin all of our enterprise clients up on their own dedicated infrastructure, and then a per unit cost, which is normally per employee, might be per store, and then a configuration cost depending on what we need to do up front. Platform costs and configuration costs kind of make sense because you can cost those. The per unit cost is a nightmare because that isn't how our costs scale. And so then that's the sort of challenge. And do you break that down on features? But features isn't what the client cares about, is solutions. Like, are you going to solve my problem? And then how do you scale that? So we work with organizations like O2, 2,500 staff. We're now working with an organization of 28,000 staff. So that's tenfold. And so does the per unit cost come down? We try and do value-based pricing, which is as part of that consultative approach. We sort of say, so these are your problems, and then do a business case for them. So we know that we can save this, and actually if you estimate this, and we make those estimates very conservative about what might be the addressable cost, the return to you would be this, and therefore, if we work pricing out like this, your potential return is X, because what we need is a cohort of enterprise clients for whom O2 got a 20-fold return on investment. So they paid their deal. They paid for our contract in about 2 weeks. And so it's, I guess in that way you kind of reassure clients, because otherwise ultimately pricing for SaaS products is relatively arbitrary on the per unit bit, because that isn't how your costs scale.
And do you have any situations where your competitors have a different model or and they try and compare the two and it doesn't match up?
Yeah, sort of. So our big enterprise, the smaller competitors that we don't now directly compete against are just £1 or £2 per employee per month. The enterprise clients are really interesting because they charge for everything. So every change request, every kind of site visit, every support, everything, and are really cumbersome. So in that way, our pricing model looks quite lean and agile, and it is. And what we want to do is deliver a whole load of value, which is great for our clients and great for us. But it's really hard, and I don't have that universal model. We've done a lot of stuff, and I was going to maybe write a blog post on it about sort of the approach that we took and the structure that we arrived at.
Awesome. Holly, what about you guys?
I was going to say these guys are probably
okay, sure thing.
Yeah, well, place to ask the question, so I'm happy to leave it.
Give us all the answers.
Yeah, I mean, I want simpler than Chris's. So it's per seat pricing, and that's what we've done. And we've explored value-based pricing, but it's really difficult to get right, especially when people are used to seat pricing or per project or per bit, bandwidth or data or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that for us right now is kind of a real simple sell, but at the same time, scaling that can sometimes be difficult as well. So it's like how do you find a balance between giving them value and also what we think the product's worth. So.
Amazing, yeah, we could talk all day about pricing. Well, I really want to give a massive round of applause to all of our three speakers. Thank you very much, Mira, Holly, and Chris.